Welcome back to Delicious and Nutritious, where we use the best quality ingredients to cook the tastiest food. Today, what we are going to be cooking is going to be the chunky chef's recipe that's going to be the spicy Thai noodles. So this recipe is a little bit more of a basic recipe. However, I'm really excited for this one because I'm all into the vegetables. So I'm gonna be adding some vegetables to this mix, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So first and foremost, what we are going to need is a pound of linguine. So what I have here is going to be the brown pad Thai rice noodles. Obviously it's gonna be organic, really like these. So this is a net worth of 8 ounces. So in order for me to get this, I'm going to need 2 of these to make it 16. We are also going to need the crushed red pepper flakes. Like I said, this one is spicy, so if you're a little bit sensitive to spicy, you may want to consider doing something a little bit different. And then it's calling for 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Vegetable oil could be a myriad of different things. We are going to use refined coconut oil, my preferred oil that I do cook with, or you can do some type of butter or ghee. And then it's going to ask for some toasted sesame oil. So this particular one we have is going to be organic toasted sesame oil, and this is gonna be the Sprouts brand. The great thing about some of the brands, the label brands from the stores, is you can get them for a fraction of the price, because toasted sesame oil and regular sesame oil is actually a lot more expensive sometimes. So this particular one I think was like $4, when in comparison I've definitely seen it in the $10 to $15 range. And then we're gonna need chili paste. So I have sambal olek chili paste, which is gonna be ground fresh chili paste. So unfortunately this one is not organic, but I do believe that they do have some organic options at Whole Foods. I was at Sprouts today, so I wasn't able to grab those. And then next we're gonna be 8 tablespoons of soy sauce. So there's a bunch of different soy sauces. This one I have is gonna be liquid aminos from Bragg's brand. It's more of like an extract. However, if you're gonna use regular soy sauce, what I would suggest doing is the organic tamari sauce. Tamari sauce, not the quick fermented, I want the long-term fermented tamari sauce. That means that it has basically had enough time to degrade any of the anti-nutrient properties. That's why fermenting is such a powerful process, and it starts to break down some of those nutrients to make them more bioavailable for our bodies. And then next we need tablespoons of honey. So this is going to require 6 tablespoons of honey. I am a big fan of raw honey. And in specific, we do go ahead and open this one. So we obviously have used this. This is honey, like honey. This is not coming out at all. This is hard honey. So I'm actually gonna have to melt this honey to be able to use it, or put it into some type of hot mixture. This one in specifically is Heavenly's organic, 100% organic raw white honey. I'm a fan of it. I believe that when I'm looking at beehives, you typically see honey that looks more like this. It's even got the wax film on top right there, because bees do make wax, right? So this is a totality honey. When you see honey that's super liquid, more than likely it's been heated up and it's been modified a little bit, more than likely to be appetizing and more easily used for us as cooks and chefs. So I'm not a fan of that. I stay away from it. I want it as close to as nature intended as possible. Raw honey is definitely the way to go. And then finally, she adds some things in the recipe. Obviously the recipe is gonna be pinned in the comments below for you guys. She says carrots, peanuts, cilantro, sriracha, sesame seeds, all great things. But I'm gonna add a couple different things. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use mushrooms, I'm going to use some broccoli, and I'm going to use some zucchini. I really like how that tastes. Additionally, carrots are really good as well, to just chop them up like little matchsticks. And the preferred method of cooking my vegetables is going to be steamed. I'm going to steam it. I already have the pot on over here that's already being heated up. And then we have the double steamer right here. So I'm able to cook 2 of them, or I could just use 1. It just depends what I want, but I love steaming vegetables. Also, the reason why steaming vegetables is much better, as we did talk about it on the last episode, I believe, when you steam vegetables, it doesn't pull the nutrients out. Think about diffusion. As soon as you put broccoli in water, you start to cook it, the nutrients are not in the water. So when you're cooking it, in nature's balance, what wants to happen is it wants to pull the nutrients out of the fruit or vegetable and put it in the water so that there's an equal amount of nutrients between the two. We do not want that happening. We want it to be locked in there. You do get that by steaming it to keep it in integrity. So steaming is the preferred method to keep all the nutrients locked into your vegetables as much as possible. And then we have ourselves a rainbow carrot. This is gonna be a white one. So if we're looking in order of what's gonna cook the fastest or slowest, because we need to know that first. So carrots are gonna be first, they take the longest. Broccoli is gonna be second. Zucchini and mushrooms are about the third. So we can't put them all in at the same time. We're gonna have mushy zucchini, and we're gonna have overly cooked mushrooms, and then we're gonna have just the right amount for the carrots and the broccoli. So we're gonna cut up this one first as we start to prepare. So first thing we're gonna do is we are going to chop up this. The top is where all the nutrients kind of come from. I always eat this. You guys don't have to. I mean, if you don't like the consistency of it, you know that you don't usually get that, but I'm a big fan. So we're gonna start chopping this up here. Flip this over. Excuse me while I eat and cook at the same time. It's actually common, very common for me to do. All right, so as far as cutting my carrots, I cut them in half, then I cut them in a fourth, and then I'm gonna dice them down into the size that I want. And then finally, if I think they're too big, I'm gonna flip them on their side in groups of a quarter of it, and then I'm gonna chop them in half, and then I have the size that I'm looking for. So once again, flipping it on its side, grabbing it, cutting it right down in half, and then I'm gonna cut this in half again, and boom, I have all the carrots that I need. So carrots are good to go. As soon as I get that water boiling, which is gonna be very close, I'm going to drop those right into the steamer, and I'm gonna start steaming them, and then we're gonna start working on the sauce, because this is a really quick recipe, so we wanna make sure that we allow this recipe to be quick and we're not going for. So broccoli, big fan of broccoli. Broccoli is amazing. I don't mind too much about the discoloration on broccoli, but you gotta make sure that you cut enough of the stem off so it doesn't become way too coarse when you're actually chewing this. And then for me, I just look in the broccoli and I chop it like this, and then if it's too big, then I'll go through and I'll re-chop. So I just kind of rotate. I'm looking for each stem, chopping them all off, cutting them in half. Like I said, if this is too big for you, is all you have to do, guys, cut them even more. No big deal, bang. I like this recipe a lot. And then one last ingredient that I did not mention that I'm gonna throw in there is going to be arrowroot powder. The reason why I'm saying arrowroot powder is it's gonna thicken the sauce just a little bit. It's like potato starch and cornstarch. I'm not a fan of cornstarch. No go for me on the cornstarch, but arrowroot powder or starch or whatever you wanna call it, arrowroot flour, is going to be basically the same thing, but a whole lot more healthy and congruent for our bodies, as opposed to modified cornstarch. And then the modified cornstarch is typically GMO, and it carries a bunch of pesticides and pesticide residue, something we're not looking to ingest. All right, so I want these to be a little bit thinner. When we did make the pasta, it was a little bit thicker, and I noticed when I was cooking it, I wasn't the biggest fan, and it didn't go throughout the entire pasta dish. So I'm going to make these ones. This one is gonna be a full chop. I'm gonna take that off right there. Those big chunks aren't gonna cut it for us. And when I do have big pieces, I still try to maintain that similar thing where I'm looking to chop into it as opposed to just chop it. I mean, you can chop it in half, but then you kind of get something like this effect where sometimes it just doesn't always come out the best. So I'm chopping off a couple of the loose ends right there, trying to maintain as much of the stem as possible. And we have our broccoli done, and then onto the zucchini. But it looks like the water is boiling, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my steamer grate. I'm going with the carrots first, and then eventually I'm gonna throw the broccoli in here as well, and then I will end up putting the zucchini in there for the bottom of this. So I'm gonna put the carrots on for about a minute, and then we're gonna be on to putting the broccoli in there, but we're gonna cut the zucchini. And that particular one is the stainless steel Teflon. Like I do say, guys, please, if you're gonna start buying pots and pans, you haven't bought a ton, please stay away from the non-stick black ones in specific. I would suggest either an eco-friendly pan, such as the one that we talked about, which you can find in the pinned comments of most of my videos. Another thing, when I'm heating, cooking, whatever with water, so I have two different waters. I have my drinking water, which you guys can see sitting right there. That drinking water is going to be pH, it's gonna be reverse osmosis, and that one in specific is spun to have energy pumped back into the water, because water is very energetic. There's a study that's out there, I forget exactly the name of the doc, but you can basically search frozen water and music, and I'm sure the study will pop up. They played music to water, and then they froze it, and then they chopped it up as frozen and looked at under in a microscope and saw that the water was differently shaped depending on what type of energy the music saw. So that means that water is obviously very liquid. It takes the shape of whatever it is. So the drinking water is very important. For me, I'm drinking that specific. And then I have the water that's still reverse osmosis, but it's not high pH or anything. This is what I wash all my vegetables in, and I also boil everything in as well. I never, ever, at all possible, use tap water. There are so many chemicals in the tap water. It is not okay. I really suggest that you guys start trying to do that, or you can get one of the under the sink filters that comes up and you can kind of sit it there. I do have one of those as well. When I do have those hooked up, I don't have it hooked up right now, I use that for washing my hands, washing my dishes, and boiling all of my water. I do not drink from that specific, even though it is reverse osmosis. So it goes tap water, then under the sink, then we have the reverse osmosis from the store with the high pH. And ultimately, which is very rare to find, you guys do want to learn about it, it's called Eco Waterhouse in Dana Point, California. If you check their website out, they'll explain more about it. It's a really cool process of what they do. That place is all they do is sell water. And now we are on to our zucchini. I love zucchini, especially in Asian type dishes. Big fan. You can use squash as well, the yellow. I'm just taking off the tops right quick. And remember guys, if you have the ability to compost and you're buying organic vegetables, man, I'm telling you, you will have some of the best soil, especially if you plant your own. Really cool, great thing to do. It comes out some of the best soil and it will literally make some of the best tasting and strongest plants that you can possibly do. And I'm cutting these zucchini the same that I do cut the carrots. And if you guys are wondering, I'm using a Santoku knife right now. All right, so right now I need to put the broccoli in there. Here we go. So the carrots have been cooking. And now it is time for the broccoli to jump in with the carrots. At this point, it's not really that big of a deal if it stays together or not, because it's all eventually gonna go into the same place. And now it's time, we have our water heating up over there to start boiling the noodles. We need to start getting this whole thing going so we can make sure that it's efficient, it's ready to go. So the noodles, ready to go into the pot. We're gonna put them in there. We're gonna follow the directions on the back. I do have black noodle one as well, but if you wanna start with all the brown, because there's a slight different flavor here, this one is going to be bring 4 to 5 quarts of water to a boil, add noodles, and boil for 5 minutes or until tender. So it seems like the brown noodles are typically going to cook at a boil. And we have the zucchini chopped up and ready to go, and the grand finale is gonna be the mushrooms. How I prefer the mushrooms to be, I like big chunky mushrooms in any type of most of my food. Honestly, I'd never really chop them too fine, so I'm just going to quarter these mushrooms and leave as is. I think it gives it a great taste. The mushrooms hold a lot more flavor, and mushrooms cook down quite a bit, so I really don't want to chop them too much, and then, you know, they cook down so much that you can't even taste the mushrooms. I'm actually a big mushroom fan. I really like mushrooms. So whatever one you can do, you can also slice these as well. Totally up to you. It is your dish at the end of the day. Try out whatever you'd like, whatever you're most comfortable with, and then next time, try something else. It's always about cooking, not only just cooking. You wanna make sure that it is going to be congruent for you and it's something that you like, that every time you go to make it, you're like, ooh, maybe I can try this in it. Maybe there's a flavor missing. You wanna try a flavor, then you drop it in the comments. You're like, hey guys, have you ever tried this on this particular recipe? Because there's always additions available, subtractions available, because these are just people's ideas and interpretations. So you may have something that you wanna add to, and you can add to the recipe in the pinned comments below, because that's what we're all about here. Cooking delicious and nutritiously with the best ingredients. We obviously want it to taste good as well. And then finally, we have all of our vegetables chopped up and ready to go. So we are done with this wonderful Santoku knife. Next, we are on to starting to really get down to the sauce. So we have those two things going and boiling. We have the pasta. We also have the vegetables. You don't want to overcook the vegetables. It looks like it's about time for us to put the zucchini and as well the mushrooms in there. And here's one tip for the broccoli, guys. As soon as you see the broccoli just slightly start to discolor, that's a good indicator that it's pretty much done. So this one is slightly starting to go from like a green into a little bit more of like a yellowy brown color. So that is a big indicator that the broccoli is pretty much done. You can always just cut off a piece of a stem towards the end and try that as well. Easy way to tell if the broccoli's done for you. And the grand finale, we have these two going in. Bam. That is going to make the dish right there. Now we have our skillet. I like using the stainless steel because then I can use a knife and I can stir it pretty easily. I don't have to worry about scratching this. If you're using a non-stick, eco-friendly, non-toxic pan, you cannot use this. You're gonna have to use a wood spoon. But we're gonna heat the oil in here. So remember, it says 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. When I cook, I'm not super specific about it, but if you guys want to be super specific, a bigger spoon is usually about a tablespoon. So there's my 2 tablespoons sitting right in there. And then we're gonna heat the chili pepper flakes. She calls for 1/2 to 1.5 teaspoons of the red chili pepper flakes. So for me, That just depends how spicy you want it, is what I'm reading from that. So I'm gonna go right in the middle. So it looks like we are going to heat this oil up with the red chili pepper flakes over on the stove. And also, I want to remind you guys, whenever you're cooking pasta, especially gluten-free pasta, as soon as you put in there, you want to make sure it's all broken up, for one, with a fork. Number two, I always put a little bit of refined coconut oil in there to make sure that it doesn't congeal, because the one thing about the gluten-free is that it can congeal together and then it can kind of come out, especially with these linguine type noodles, as more of like a little bit blocked up. So you want to make sure that you're constantly trying to do that. Okay, so as all we're doing here with the oil, and yes, I'll have a new kitchen setup coming soon for you guys so that we can watch me cook over there as well, which is going to require an additional camera, which is totally cool. We will be having that set up here in a little bit. That is going to be basically just heating up the oil with the chili flakes. As soon as that's done, I found these really nifty bowls at Bed Bath & Beyond, and I was like, what am I going to need a perforated front of a bowl with the top part? And this is gonna come in perfectly because it says strain the oil out. So all I'm gonna have to do is pour that oil into here, dump it back in there, and then we're gonna add the chili flakes, the soy sauce, and the honey to that mixture. So the oil is hot. You wanna be very cautious here because it will definitely start to burn. So we're gonna go ahead and drain that right there, as much oil as possible. Once again, using a silicone pad, great way to get the addition. Look how much extra oil we would've got there if I didn't use this type of thing. Be cautious not to put the silicone on there for too long. I'm not a big fan of heating up silicone, but it does do wonders for getting that out. So we're just gonna go ahead there. We're gonna have to rinse this pot out now because we don't want any of the pepper flakes in there, and then we're gonna come right back. Now that we have the oil sitting in there, and we're not gonna be able to filter out all that, but for the most part, it's gonna filter out a lot of that, and then we're gonna use the silicone spatula as well to really try to get as much oil back as possible. So you see we get a little bit of the chili flakes in there, but we're not getting much of the seeds, which is going to be the hot part. So we can get in and around as much as possible. I didn't think I was gonna be able to use this fast. Like, this thing came up really handy right there, and then you can see right in there all of the flakes sitting right on top. Okay, onto the hot part. We have our oil right here. We're going for 1.5 teaspoons of chili paste. Remember, make sure to do this to whatever suits your taste bud and your stomach. It is a little spicy, a little bit. Try it out. If you're not a big fan of spice, try 1/2 teaspoon. There's no reason that you need to do all of it just because the recipe says so. And then we have the honey. This is gonna be 6 tablespoons of honey. And so for me, my tablespoon is a little bit too weak, so I'm just gonna be eyeing this. I'm not going all the way for 6 just because I don't want it super sweet. I'm more of a fan of saltier Asian recipes. So that's probably 3 right there, 2.5. I'm gonna go and grab 1 more and then going there. If you wanna be super specific, what you can do is you can scoop it all out into a bowl or scoop it right into your other scoop, and then you can level it off just to make sure, but this seems like a good thing for me. And then we're gonna have to whisk this together. And thankfully it's still a little hot, but it already smells absolutely incredible. And then the honey starts to melt. So you guys see here that melting the honey is part of a heating process. And when you see melted honey in a jar, they've obviously had to have heated before in the past to get it there. All right, and then we need 6 tablespoons of your soy sauce. I would prefer either you use the liquid Bragg's, which is what we're using here. So there's 3, 4. It's a slightly different flavor than regular soy sauce, so please try it first. And then if you're not gonna use this, I would prefer the organic tamari long fermented version. And it says whisk together, but I'm just gonna use a spoon and stir it. And so there you have it. This is basically what the sauce is gonna look like. It's gonna be a little bit more liquidy. So if you like that, you can do it here. This is the time that you would add in the arrowroot powder. The arrowroot powder is gonna make it a little bit more thick of a sauce. So if you prefer it to be a little bit thicker, I would start off with a 1/2 teaspoon of arrowroot powder right now. Here goes our 1/2 teaspoon of arrowroot powder. I prefer it a little thicker. Okay, and then we did heat it up a little bit. So if you guys do wanna see it, has a little bit more of a congeal feel as opposed to just being straight liquid. And whisking it is important, making sure to get all that arrowroot together. You can kind of see right there. All right, so we have everything in there as far as the sauce goes. And this one is hot, so we're ready to start mixing it all together. So if you're adding vegetables and you prefer to have vegetables, I say to put the vegetables in first. I love when my vegetables hold the flavor of the sauce. I think it's a really good addition. And just remember, we are going to be cooking this a little bit more. So you notice that my zucchini is a little bit more intact. I enjoy it like this. And then my mushrooms are not super overly cooked either. It's really important that you do that. And if you add as much vegetables as I am, you're probably gonna have to add a decent amount more sauce. So you can just double the sauce recipe or 1.5 it. All right, here we go for the sauce. Stirring it up, and then I'm gonna cook this a little bit. Look at all these vegetables though. How delicious is this, man? I love adding vegetables in mass quantities to all my food. You guys are gonna notice that about me. Whenever there's a recipe, we're gonna do a great pasta visual recipe, and I'm gonna be adding a ton more vegetables. It just doesn't cut it when it's just a few. We're gonna cook this for a couple minutes, really let the sauce cook into the vegetables, and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna finish it up, toss in the pasta, we'll pretty much be done. And just remember, the goal right now is not to overcook the vegetables. It's just heating them up just a little bit to ready it for the introduction with the pasta. And also, I just want to put another asterisk here. Guys, often you see me here, when I'm cooking by myself and I make something and I follow the recipe and it's like, oh, it needs more sauce. What I do is I literally just start adding stuff into it. I know in my mind, okay, I use 6 tablespoons of soy sauce. Okay, if I want to add some more, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna throw, this is right off the top of my head, 1/2 teaspoon of chili pepper. I'm gonna throw 3, basically tablespoons of here, or I'll just eye it. And then I'm gonna do a tablespoon of honey, throw it in there, and I'll start mixing it up. And if I want it to congeal a little bit more, then I'll go ahead and I'll throw more arrowroot powder in there. I'll just kind of shake it in. That's how I want you guys to start getting more comfortable with it. Just like going with it. You see the ingredients in the base core, you kind of see the ratios. I'm gonna give you the brief overview in all the videos, but then you have to make it your own when you are cooking, because that's really where it starts to shine to complement your own taste buds. Okay, and here we have it. This is going to be it. I think it's perfect right now. Separating those two, we had the carrots and the broccoli that went first. This looks absolutely fantastic right now. And then we had, and you have to eye it. I don't know, it's just a few minutes. You really have to start getting really comfortable with see the zucchini? Zucchini is a challenging one because sometimes it will overcook and then it becomes like absolute mush, but this one has some structure to it still and a little bit of crunch as well, which really makes the dish. And then finally we have our pasta. Our pasta is going to be put in there. And for me in this dish, I do not add the sesame oil in the beginning process. I am not a big fan of cooking with sesame oil. It's a low heat oil, so I'm not a big fan. Now would be a great time to toss in the sesame oil. And this, we're just working it through. Notice how it came in a big clump. You guys might be like, ooh, that doesn't look very appetizing. It's pasta, guys. It's gonna take on some of the liquid that is in here, a little bit from the vegetables. And you don't have to do the black rice and the brown rice as far as the noodles go, the pad thai. I just happen to grab both of them, so that's what I have here. But the black rice does have a little bit different of a flavor. And so here, when I'm not paying attention because I am cooking with you guys, this is what happens sometime with the brown rice. So sometimes you'll just have to grab it. It is a tad bit hot right now, and you're just gonna have to peel it off. So this is why stirring it right up front is very important. And when I stir it, I use 2 forks in the water to make sure that it does come apart, because now I have to do this right now because I'm cooking with you guys. And so I could just either remove this or I could try to make it work, which we're gonna try to make it work right now. And it's all just getting down in the process. It doesn't, you know, stress me out or anything like that. It may not look the most appetizing at first, but I'm always not here for the most appetizing. I am often here for the delicious and nutritious part. So I need it to taste good and be nutritious as my forefront. And then this recipe called for 1/3 to 1/2 cup of sesame oil. I am not going all in like that. I'm gonna do approximately 1.5 tablespoons, and then I'm gonna stir it and see where I'm at. And here is the one thing that if you don't want this in there, it's not the entire dish, it's just a little piece that got stuck together. You can just remove it, not all that big of a deal. So let's go ahead and try it, see where we're at right here. We have everything in there. Seems like it's a little bit more of the black rice. That's really good. I'm a massive fan of this dish. Really tasty. All right, so I would serve with something much different than this, but I don't have that as of right now. So here we go. serving it up for delicious, nutritious, spicy Thai noodles, added vegetables. Here's a little baby serving for you guys so you guys can check it out. Comes out great. Everything is perfectly done. So the noodles, if you want to use jovial noodles, you can do that. If you want to use like a fettuccine jovial noodle, it will stay together a little bit more. These ones are a little bit more clumsy. The pad Thai ones, they do break off a little bit. So if you want more of the structure, definitely check out the jovial noodles because it doesn't have to be specifically Asian noodles to make this dish work. And I'm most curious about the zucchini. And the mushroom. Slightly sweet. You got that sweet from the honey, the salt from the soy sauce, and you get the bite from the chili paste. Man, that dish is absolutely amazing. And then you have all these vegetables in there as well that makes it delicious. And then if you guys want to add some type of protein in there, feel free to chop up some chicken, throw it in there. It will definitely take on the flavor and the body from the sauce. And also, if you do want it a little bit more salty, feel free to add a little bit of soy sauce. You can always add more at the end. If you want maybe a different type of flavor, one addition you can do is do a little bit of garlic powder. That will bring a different type of body to the flavor sauce. And then if you want a little bit more of the toasted sesame oil, you can do. You want a little bit more spicy, add a little chili paste. There's so many different avenues. You want a little bit more sweets, you can add a little bit more honey to a hot one. And it's all gonna come together exactly how you like it and exactly how you prefer. That's the wonderful part of cooking your own food. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to share this video for anybody that likes. And also, look how much food we have right here. That's just one round of this serving. Granted, we did add in a whole lot of vegetables, but if you don't, you know, you have a bunch of noodles, but this looks way better to me and to my body and my cellular organism as a whole than just noodles. So thank you guys for taking some time out of your day for cooking this recipe with me. I'm excited to cook more delicious and nutritious recipes together. We have great recipes like mac and cheese, which is gonna be vegan and dairy-free as well, which is really crazy, vegan and dairy-free. So it's gonna be congruent for everybody out there. So definitely look out for those. You guys already know what we're doing here. We are changing the world one bite at a time. I'm gonna see you guys out on the next video. Peace.